Welcome, everybody. Margie couldn't be here for the last meeting today. She asked me to run the meeting, so you have to be patient with me. It's my first time doing this. This is our last meeting, so I guess we'll start with the district update on the agenda, the implementation of the remainder of the reopening.
Sure. So the remainder of the reopening plan, we just have to move into our last phase, which is scheduled to begin May 10th, which includes moving to our full day schedule, including lunches. We've been in contact, we've communicated with the local district physician, and we've also been in contact with the local health department, explained what the plan is, shared that with them. They both felt comfortable with the way our plan is developed and gave us their blessings moving forward with the full day schedule. So beginning on Monday, May 10th, we will be operating back at our normal schedule prior to March 13th of 2020. I believe Ms. Pincus is going to jump in for summer remedial programs.
I think Danielle, you're muted. All of a sudden, I saw your hand going.
Yep, there you go. How about that? Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions about the implementation before we move on?
Hi, this is Rachel. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. I was just wondering if, given that the state moved us from orange to yellow last week, if there are any plan changes to the quarantining requirements, either a shortened amount of time or the ability to test back in. I'm particularly curious because I have 2 8th graders and graduation is coming up, and honestly, kind of thinking through my plan for June, I'm not sure what to do. And I'm considering yanking them to make sure that they don't miss their graduation ceremony. And I'm just wondering if the rules have changed or if the district has any guidance for parents who don't want their kids to miss the end of year events that are so important, especially this year.
Great question. And I apologize for not hitting on it. Devin, actually, I'm glad you're here because she is our resident expert on this. So, Ms. Orozco, if you don't mind jumping in and updating the meeting.
Of course. So we have improved to the yellow risk level. And so you'll find on the COVID dashboard is where I try to keep everything about quarantines and whatnot. So I did update all of the protocols for yellow. School nurses were already in touch with everyone who was currently on a quarantine that was originally a 14-day quarantine, and let those specific parents know of the reduction in quarantine that we're now going with. So we've gotten ahead of it in some ways, but the result right now is that while we're in yellow, we're able to do a 10-day quarantine, and it can be reduced to a 7-day quarantine with a negative test. The test just has to be taken sometime on or after day 5 of that quarantine or 5 days after an exposure. And so as long as we have those negative results turned in to the nurse, then they can clear students to come back after a 7-day quarantine instead of 10.
Okay, does it have to be a PCR test or is a rapid okay as well?
Either's fine.
Okay,
yep,
thank you.
Any viral test just can't be an antibody test.
Okay, and can you just explain the lunches? Will kids be quarantined at the 6 feet distance for lunch if someone in the lunchroom has COVID?
So, Devin, jump in if you need to, but we still follow the close contact guide definition, which is 6 feet for 15 minutes. And with our lunches, the way the principals have designed their plans, all the students will be 6 feet apart. So, the plan is that we will maintain social distancing while lunch is going on. So if a student's positive within the lunchroom, there should be no close contacts.
Okay, so no one will miss out on graduation for eating lunch.
That's the plan.
That's the plan. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions? You can unmute, you can hit the raise hand.
I have a quick question. I'm sorry, Vera. this is just out of curiosity. Is there a specific reason why 5 weeks before the end of school we're changing the whole schedule? Or is it just because because we can, which I'm not saying is wrong. I'm just trying to understand, because adjusting the schedule has been a little bit challenging and tricky, given that we've been going the whole year on early dismissal time.
So, our goal from day one, from September, or actually August, when we created our reopening plan, restart and reopening plan, was to, resume full day instruction when the health data allowed us to do that. We've been moving forward in that direction since we created the plan. And at this point, with everything dropping down into yellow, and speaking with, our health department and the school physician, it gives us the opportunity to provide the additional instruction time that we've been trying to do since the beginning of the school year. So, right now is the time that we're able to do that. And we still do have a month of learning that's going to happen, over a month of learning by the time we go to the full day implementation. So, we want to try to get as much instruction in as possible so we can close the gap on what may have already occurred during this pandemic. So we're taking advantage of that time. I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in.
Well, actually, Mr. Ranella, it's a good segue. I don't know if there's any other questions about that, but it's a good segue. Actually, hope your question and Mr. Ranella's response to what I need to discuss when it comes to summer programs and enrichment. When Mr. Ranella says it affords us an extra 5 or 6 weeks of additional instruction, that's really critical at this point, because we do have many students who typically do well in school who are not doing well right now. Even though we're giving them assessments and they're showing that a lot of students have maintained their learning, there is a large pocket of students who typically wouldn't be identified at this point in the year as being possibly not passing classes or accumulating credit in the high school, which is what they need to do to move on to the next level of course or graduate. And we've been talking about this probably since December or January, but we've even been talking about this since last summer, that we know that there's a pocket of students who virtual and hybrid, was not meeting their needs, and we did everything we could. And the teachers, this is nothing against the teachers, it's nothing against the plan, it's nothing against administration. It's just for lack of either engagement or the type of instruction just didn't meet their needs. We have certain students who just are not doing well, and some of them have not even attempted to engage in the instruction, unfortunately. The schools have been struggling to get some students on and participating. Parents have been trying to work with the schools to get the students on and participating, but some of them just have not put forth the effort, to do that, to engage with what is available to them. And so as a result, as we're monitoring grades, by the end of the third marking period, you start to get a better idea, quite honestly, things start to picture starts to form, more concretely. And what we're seeing is that there is a good number of students at the high school who are in jeopardy of not accumulating the credits that they need or passing the courses they need to move on to the next level, of course, whether that's in English, phys ed, science or math or social studies. And that in the high school, there are specific courses that must be completed prior to graduation. So these students are, in a sense, in jeopardy of not meeting graduation requirements. And we've been talking about this group of students really since the middle of the year, when we started to get an idea that we might have some students who were struggling. And we talked about the fact that we might have to do something different this summer to help those students who are not meeting graduation requirements. Not only are we seeing this in the high school, but unfortunately this year we're seeing pockets of students even at the middle schools, at all 3 middle schools, who are in jeopardy of not passing core content classes, which really is essential to being set up for success in high school. And because of that, the first time in a long, long, long time, well before I was here, so more than 10 years ago, we are looking at running a 4-credit recovery type summer school for our middle school and high school students. This is something that we typically don't have a lot of need for. So students who are in that position have either gone to a neighboring school district who runs a summer school to get credit recovery, or they do an online program. But we have the numbers of students right now anyway. Of course, they still have 5 or 6 weeks left, and we're hoping that they can turn this around. You know, the teachers are trying to work with them. The parents are trying to work with the teachers and the students. The administrators are involved. But if they need a lifeline, if this doesn't turn around for them in these 5 or 6 weeks, we are planning right now to run a middle school and a high school summer school, basically a 4-credit summer school. And that is going to be funded by some of the CARES Act money that the district received last spring, as well as some of the ESSER money that we received this year. And this is exactly the type of program that those funds were kind of had in mind. You know, students who, due to the pandemic, are not where they should be when it comes to academics or their achievement, and giving districts money to put programs in place to assist them to get them back on track where they were pre-pandemic. So we do see these next 5 or 6 weeks as essential, and as much instructional time as we can get is really critical right now. At the middle school and high school level, it can be an hour and a half or more of additional instructional time. You know, the teachers have had to focus on priority standards, and that is what the state, you know, advised us to do. And Dr. Kerrigan and Mrs. Banglan, Mrs. Morales, Mr. Stiegel, you know, all of the directors have been working, Mr. Graziano, have been working with the teachers to really focus on those priority standards, given the fact that they've been operating on a reduced day schedule. You know, that does have impact on how much you can cover, you know, in a curriculum. And we don't just want to cover curriculum. You know, that's not what our intent is in Middletown. We want students to achieve with what they're exposed to. We don't just want to cover and move on. So, you know, we also have identified that there have been some parts of units of study, especially in English language arts, where we are seeing teachers had to make, you know, certain decisions, and with the guidance of administrators, and writing, say, for example, maybe didn't have as much time dedicated to instruction, to writer's workshop as we normally would. And we know that writing right now is a critical skill, not only a life skill, but it's really a skill that helps students at all levels on standardized assessments, not just state assessments. Those of you who have been in the district long enough know that I am not one to talk, you know, too heavily about standardized test results. We don't teach to test in Middletown. It should be a natural reflection of the good teaching and the good learning that's taking place, those test scores. But the reality is students are still taking SATs, ACTs, and AP exams, and they're not going away. I know that there's been chatter about schools looking, some schools not, you know, requiring SAT scores. That's not every school though. There are still many schools who require SAT scores to be uploaded and submitted in your application. And for some merit money, like the PSATs, if you want to be a national merit finalist, and or other scholarships, they do require an SAT or an ACT score to be submitted. So if you've been through that process, I've been through it twice with my own kids, you know that, you know. So to that extent, writing is a critical skill because that is how students convey what they know. It's usually in their written responses. And testing nowadays is much more focused on critical thinking. It's not just on regurgitation of facts. So it's less reliance on multiple choice, and it's more reliance on open-ended responses and short answers. So we are looking at building opportunities, not just this summer, but over the course of next year in before and after school programs, and use some of our learning acceleration funds and our CARES Act funds to put back in place opportunities that students lost due to the pandemic, specifically for writing as well, at all levels. So some of the other things that we're planning on for this summer, aside from the summer school, the credit recovery, and introduction of writing opportunities, and our normal SOAR K-8 intervention program. What we are seeing though is that there's more students who will qualify, and that would be all students. So that's gen ed, special ed, ESL students, anyone who is currently identified as a tier 1, 2, or 3 student in our multi-tiered intervention system of supports is identified. But we are also looking at other students who, for whatever reason, teachers recommending that they need, you know, additional time for learning. So we do expect our numbers to be a little bit larger this year than usual. And we are planning on creating a flexible type program like we did last summer, and that really resulted in high rates of participation. So it will be in person. It could be a blended model. It could also be all virtual, depending on the needs of the student and the families. Last year, in SOAR, some of you might remember we did like small group sessions. We did it that way, where teachers were given rosters of students and they were given the flexibility to work with the families to create the times that they would connect. It was more like tutoring sessions, which really worked out well, because then the learning was really focused on what each student really needed. So it was very personalized and differentiated. So we are planning on running a larger K-8 SOAR program this summer. It will probably spill over too into next year in larger than usual before and after school academies. Because again, we're trying to build back time, build back lost opportunities. Traditional learning has to take place in the normal amount of hours that we will be in school next year, but we really need to increase the time that students are spending on learning, because time is an important piece of the equation to overall learning. It's the student's learning capacity, any individual, whether you're talking about adults or student learners, it's their IQ or their learning capacity, and the amount of time they need to spend is really what creates equity. Some students maybe don't need as much time. They have very high learning capacities and they can practice something a couple times and then they can move on and they've mastered it. Other students need more time, and time is the way that we create equity. That's one of the modifications, accommodations we can do to ensure that all learners achieve at a high level. So that is something that we're looking at. We're also looking at putting in targeted assistance programs or offerings such as phonemic awareness, fluency, comprehension, word study, especially for our kindergartners and first graders who maybe didn't have as much time in school to build those really critical foundational skills. Those skills, if they're not left, or if they're left to be inadequate, can really have long-term effects, negative effects on a student's overall reading capacity and achievement. So we really want to make sure we go back and provide those kindergartners, first and second graders with those time to work on those foundational skills. We're also looking at Jumpstart math programs, because we know that conceptual learning and really having a solid understanding of why we do things with math and how things work is really critical. Especially, we want to make sure that students up to Algebra 1 have great foundational skills, because that's really a really good determination of how they're going to do in upper level math courses. So we are looking at Jumpstart K-8 programs for math, as well as Algebra 1, geometry, and Devin, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm trying to remember. I think there was one more that I'm missing for Jumpstart math. Was there? I think it was Algebra 2 as well. Yes. Okay.
Yes,
Thank you. A lot of programs we have on our list, so I'm trying to make sure I cover as many of them as possible. One of the restrictions, or I shouldn't say restrictions, one of the requirements for the learning assistant grant that the district is eligible to receive, which is upwards of about $115,000, $120,000, is that 75% of those funds, the government is requiring that they be spent on STEM opportunities, learning opportunities. The other 25% should be somehow connected to the arts. So in reviewing our traditional course offerings and our participation rates of students in our courses, what we are seeing, I'll start first with our arts, our chorus, band, and drama. Unfortunately, this is the second year in a row where we're seeing deflated levels of participation and course enrollment, especially at the middle school in band and chorus. And in speaking to some students coming out of 4th and 5th grade, it's really because they haven't had a lot of opportunity to engage in band or chorus the last year and a half. So they don't really have an innate passion or interest, because it didn't have an opportunity to be developed because of the fact that we were very limited in how we could provide instruction in those areas at the 4th and 5th grade level, even at the middle school level, so going into high school. So one of the things we're working on with Mr. Graziano and the teachers is how we can provide additional learning opportunities in the arts. And we're looking at summer arts academies and programs, maybe like a Jumpstart instrumental program. So students coming out of 4th and 5th grade who don't feel confident enough in their abilities, it may boost up that confidence level and encourage them to participate in chorus or band in middle school. So that's something that we're still working on. That a lot of the high school students lost opportunities for performances, and that really, hurts us. We know that that's important to those students. So we're hoping maybe we can build back in a summer theater program and put on a performance, because that's really critical also for them as they're developing their college applications and their college resumes. So the other 75% that has to be focused on STEM, that's science, technology, engineering, and math. We talked about the Jumpstart Math programs. So the Learning Acceleration Funds will help support those. And we're also looking at some science, technology, and engineering type offerings. And those would be not just in the summer, but also before and after school next year to build back in again some of the lost opportunities because of the schedule. So we're looking at coding, which is really critical to developing a precursor to computer science skills. One of the creative things, you know, in talking to, the board just approved our new district director of curriculum student programs, Mrs. Burt. And one of the things she's working on in her current district is the Learning Acceleration Grant. And we were brainstorming back and forth some of our ideas and their ideas. And we both kind of found a great middle ground idea, which was offering creative writing courses where then students use coding to animate them with graphics or make them like visual, you know, storytelling, where this, you know, read aloud. So we're going to definitely be looking at more science, technology, engineering type programs, because that, of course, is what is required, but also where we miss out opportunity for students to develop those skills over the last year and a half. I think I covered most of the basic and the more high profile courses. Of course, we may have to, once we get a full complement, a full picture of student learning assessment data, which will happen over the next month, month or so, we may see that there's other targeted areas or skills or standards that our students as a whole are showing less capacity with or achievement with. And then that might, adjust some of our thinking and what we might offer, say, into next year in before and after school academies. But it's definitely, building back time, building back opportunity. We know that sometimes that's difficult for parents, and students to plan around because they have other things going on. But we're going to do the best we can to be as flexible as possible.
I don't know if you can see the chat. There was one comment and one question from Becky. I think you answered the question, but.
Yeah, so will they be in person? Yes, there will be opportunity for in person. And we also know that we've heard from some parents already that they will need flexibility and maybe being virtual. So the instructors will work with the families to make it flexible to their needs. Self-directed hands-on, yep, that's what we're talking about when it comes to STEM, definitely hands-on and math. We're looking to build that concrete foundational understanding. Okay, we get students set of course, we're beating through music and exploratory cycle. It's completely leave music exposure in middle school if they don't. We do have, Mr. Lawson, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that there are multiple arts in the middle school exploratory cycle, and students can actually elect to do chorus or band almost exclusively if that's a real passion for them, correct?
Yes, chorus, band, or the activity arts cycle. That's their choice going into 6th grade.
Right, and even in the exploratory cycle, I do believe that there are arts classes. Yeah,
it's fine art. It's all of the art classes, 6th through 8th grade. Hands-on construction lab. There's yes, an answer to your question.
Yeah, I understand what Denise and Becky are saying. It really is. It is tricky. It's very complicated to cover all the standards that we are obligated to do based on the state school board's curriculum. So I know they're saying, like, could we add more music? Could we add more? What happens is, what are you taking off the plate? What are you detracting? And we're required to have the digital literacy, the technology standards covered. We're required to have business financial literacy exposure to that in middle school. We're required to have STEM, so that's why we have the robotics and the coding courses. So really the exploratory cycle, it wasn't, although students gave us their feedback, for those of you who have been in, maybe had middle schoolers at the time, when we revamped the schedule, we did ask students and parents to give us feedback for specific type courses, but the courses were inclusive of all the different curricular areas and subject areas that we were required to provide instruction for. So that's part of the equation and how the exploratory cycle got created.
Is there any other questions before we move on?
Yeah, can we request the summer program, or it's just on teacher recommendation? Like if my daughter,
Devin, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we were going to do some surveys, and maybe not for just summer, but more for the learning acceleration for the
Yeah.
STEM and the arts. Yes, that's something that we're looking at.
Okay, any other
Yes.
questions?
I have, and just to comment, I mean, chorus and band, I mean, having a 20-year-old and now a 13-year-old, your cycle program has gotten so much better. Digital media, theater, there are a whole bunch of different offerings within that cycle that has caused people to move away from the chorus and band. But the one comment you made about more time, and I certainly support more time in the middle school, the 40-minute periods in the core classes. I mean, the poor teachers are speed talking through them. Some of the kids kind of, you know, are handling it well. I mean, others do stay and have, you know, calls after school or doing homework till 3, 4 in the afternoon. Has there been talk from the principals to the teachers that as they go to this longer day, that we kind of ease kids back into the schedule? I can't imagine them going to 3 o'clock in middle school and then having another 3 hours of work after that for an initial start. So I just wanted to see what the thought process is there.
Yeah, that's actually a conversation that we had the last couple of days, and I emailed all the principals something to help guide their conversations. But we have a principals meeting on Thursday, and we're going to be talking more about it then. But yes, Vera, that is something that was clarified for just yesterday. Actually, I provided some clarification about how the balance, you know, of going back to the full day schedule, the loss of opportunity for dedicated, say, office hours, you know, or time, that extra time that students may have been working more independently, you know, and how we have to kind of, like you said, move back, you know, to the more traditional full day schedule and what that means for homework. And
Can I
after
ask that-
school opportunities for extra help.
Are virtual kids going to have an opportunity for, say, an advisory? Is there someone for them to talk to during advisory if they're home? How are they supposed to get extra help?
So as you know, even pre-COVID, the teachers always provided extra help before and after school.
Right.
So if you're a virtual learner, you know, that will be available to you before or after school, like it always would for
Okay.
all students. Yep.
Anybody else have any questions?
One of the things I wanted to, because I know we're all concerned about stamina when we go back to full day, but one of the good things about the middle school schedule is pretty much in all three grades, they do have like an activity arts or phys ed course in the afternoon. So it's not like all of a sudden they're going to be hit with 2 academic subjects after lunch every day. So that's sort of a benefit the way the schedule just always has been. So for example, 8th grade, a lot of them have phys ed blocks, the last block, you know, like every other day actually. So, you know, so that's, you know, I'm a little less worried about it when you think about it in terms of that.
Okay. If we don't have any other questions, we're going to move on to changes.
Sorry,
in the
Danielle,
AP
I do have
courses.
one quick
Yep,
question.
Go ahead.
I'm just wondering, I know that everybody is kind of behind and some are more behind than others, but this is a universal problem, obviously not unique to Middletown. Has the State Department of Ed given any guidance as to curriculum, kind of, I don't know, modifications for next year at all grade levels to kind of acknowledge that many kids may need some catch up in the curriculum? Like, I'm assuming September, we can't just start as if this year didn't happen. So is that happening on a formal level at the state, or is it just kind of like every teacher in every class is kind of going to have to try to make up some gaps on top of teaching the expected curriculum in a normal year next year?
So I have not seen anything formal announced from the state. We did ask last summer in a survey that came to the districts, and they asked for our opinions on certain things. We did ask, along with other districts I'm aware of, because I spoke to people in other districts who added it to their responses as well. We did ask for revised standard progressions and grade level progressions. We have not seen anything to that extent. The only thing we've seen is that they're giving you money to build back in that time to get students back on track. Now, we, however, as a district did not leave it up to individual teachers, although there is always discretion at the teacher level. Once they get to know their students and what their specific students' needs are. But as I mentioned, the curriculum directors did work with the grade level teams and with the coaches and the specialists at the middle school, high school, and elementary level to put out curriculum maps this year that had particular focus on the priority standards. The way that the state standards are written, there's what we call like anchor or priority standards, and then under them are sub-standards and skills that are important, obviously, but because they kind of support the overall development of understanding to the anchor or priority standards. So we had already, as a district, done that work. And my understanding is that is what the assessments that we're going to be giving in September that the state created. This is why we delayed giving the NJSLA test this year. That the tests, why is it escaping me the name? Is it the STAR assessments? Something like that. They have a new name for it. Jumpstart, I forget. Now I'm thinking Jumpstart because I had that in my mind. But my understanding is that those assessments are modified from what the traditional New Jersey student learning assessment would be, and that they have also modified them to focus more primarily on the anchor and priority standards. So I think they realize that that is what the goal is. Those are the overarching themes and concepts and skills that we want students to know and master as they move through their make their progressions through the grades. But it's going to be those supporting standards where the teachers are going to have to use the data that's given back to them to differentiate and personalize the small group instruction.
Okay, for those, so we should expect that our kids will all have some level of a state standardized assessment happening in September.
Yes.
But I know, like, for much of the state testing, it took like months to get results in the past. So have they communicated a timeline? Like, you'll get your data by October? I mean, I can't imagine, wait, we're going to lead into November and then Christmas. It's just going to, like, when will we get to act on the assessment data?
Yeah, so prior to last year, of course, we didn't give the assessments last year, but the year before that, I will say, was the fastest turnaround time that I've ever seen. The teachers actually had some initial reports back before they even left for the summer. So it has, I think because it is more automated, it is more online. There's less scoring that has to be done by readers. That's what they would call the people who used to read the essays. They're able to get back data to us much quicker. So my understanding and looking at initial information that's come from the state is that the testing window, thank you, Eric, it is Start Strong. You're right, I knew it was STAR something. But the Start Strong test is that the testing window is going to be somewhere, and Devin, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's mid-September and third week of September through October. And then they're telling us we should get the results back within a few weeks. Now, we as a district also administer Linkit. So we actually are setting up a meeting with Linkit probably for the end of May, beginning of June, to talk about how we're going to revise our typical assessment schedule with Linkit. We don't want to push Linkit too far, the first administration of that in the fall, because to your point, Rachel, then we're getting all this data probably after the whole first marking period or the first trimester at elementary has passed. And that's a long time to wait, even though teachers are very adept at doing formative assessments in the classroom. I think a lot of them do rely on the Linkit assessment results and those NJSLA results from the prior year to help them initially form strategy groups and small instruction groups, small group instruction, I should say. But our Linkit exams give us very, very, very reliable data on students. And they even include a module where it helps the teacher even create that small group instruction calendar, and groupings. So that will assist us as well in the fall. I'm very sure of that.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go on to changes in the AP exams.
Danielle, before we move on, can we just clarify when the state assessments will be done for special ed students? Because I
was just trying to write back, Heather. I was going to do it in the chat. I'll erase that. Yes, the DLMs are being administered now. So students who have the accommodation or the modification, I should say probably more of a modification at that point, where they do not traditionally take the NJSLA, they take the DLM. That is happening now. The state did not get approval to delay that. So our access exams for our ELL students, our English language students, that is happening right now, as well as the DLMs. Any special education student who participates in the NJSLA assessment, or in years past, PARC, it's had many versions over the last couple of years. They will take the assessments in the fall with their peers. I think she's typing.
Okay, does that answer your question, Heather?
Okay, looks like it does.
Okay, so changes in the AP.
I wasn't sure, this one kind of threw me because I wasn't aware of any changes. So I actually had to call Margie and say, can you give me a little bit more background on what the person who posed the question was asking? Because I'm not aware of any major changes to our AP program. And so she actually shared with me that I guess there was some information or rumor that someone had heard that the government was looking to limit or actually even eliminate AP courses, or I guess change the criteria for it, maybe to make it a little bit more difficult. I would just like to say, going on the record, as a district, we are not looking to eliminate our AP or our dual enrollment programs. We know as a district that saves many of our families thousands of dollars when they go to college, when their students go to college. And we know that our students really enjoy taking those. And those rigorous courses, we know that students who participate in them are much more likely to succeed and graduate on time when they do attend college. That is a track that typically it is more for college track students to take those classes, but we encourage all students to take them, especially if it's an area of passion for them. And 2 years ago, we actually went to more of an open access philosophy in Middletown, which means that we've tried to cut back on certain requirements and mandates to be able to be offered participation or entry into those courses or rostering into those courses, because again, we know that students are much more likely to do well post high school if they engage in that type of rigorous curriculum and work. So we do not have any plans in this district to make it any more difficult or to eliminate those offerings for students. If anything, we're looking to expand our offerings, and we're looking to, we're really excited about Mrs. Burt coming on board next year. The directors are really excited to work with her. She has a lot of experience in working with Perkins grants, which are not needs-based. We as a district have developed a lot of curriculum and courses at the middle school and high school level that are more career and technical ed type courses. And we're really hoping she's going to be able to work with us to put them into more fine commonality and create more programs that lead to college and not so much college, but career and technical education, trade school, students who are looking for that experience after high school, where they can actually go through a program just like going through an academy or a more academic program where it's more of a trades focus. And we already have some existing courses that we can pull together to create that path, but we know we're going to have to develop some more opportunities for those students. So we're really looking forward to expand that as well. So we're not looking to shrink or pull back or cut programs. In fact, we're looking to grow our programs. We know that that's part of our strategic plan. That's an important mission for us in the curriculum department, and the board is very supportive of that as well.
That's great. I think that would answer the question. I'm not sure who had that. Did anybody else have any questions about AP? Okay, we'll move on to the revised school calendar.
So there was one change to the school calendar, and that was the change to make June 8th a virtual day for students. And that's due to the election and a lot of our schools being used as polling places. So on June 8th, it will be a virtual day for all students, and they'll run on the early dismissal schedule. So the schedule that we've been running throughout the school year will be followed on June 8th, and it will be all virtual for students. And that was the only change that was on the agenda.
So the end of the year half days, they stay the same?
Correct.
Someone had asked.
Yep, they're still in place. Yep.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
Can I didn't get a chance to ask a question that a lot of parents have posed to me. I don't know if Mrs. Orozco, oh, she's still on. I see you now. With the contact tracing, I think a lot of parents are kind of confused when their kids get contact traced because they're masked and behind plexiglass. And I guess that the question arises, you know, what are the rules now? And now that we've had virtually a year of data on our contact tracing, and I know I've talked to one principal who said all the kids they contact trace, they did not have one turn out to be positive. Can we use that data to somehow cut down on some of this contact tracing if we're seeing that we're not seeing the transmission happening in the school? I'm not saying get rid of all the protocols, obviously, let's not go crazy. But I think a lot of people are confused because when they heard masks and plexiglass and then suddenly their child gets pulled, they don't expect it. So I was just hoping you could talk to that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess, the CDC is the one who really makes that definition of what a close contact is. And a close contact is defined as somebody who's spent more than 15 minutes within a 6-foot radius of a person who has been recently positive, right, with their specific numbers in there too. And it does specifically say that the presence of masks and plexiglass barriers cannot be used to negate that definition of a close contact. So even though there are masks in between students, even though there are plexiglass dividers in between students in many of those cases, as long as there is a way for air to flow into that area, that they would still be considered close contacts. And that's not something that we decide is the rule. It really comes from straight from the CDC. And then the New Jersey Department of Health also uses that, and they've adopted the same definition. So unfortunately, the definition we can't change. What we can say is that by following all the protocols, like wearing masks and possibly the plexiglass dividers, what we're doing is exactly that. So instead of having a higher percentage of our close contacts then could actually contract COVID-19, what we've seen is that you're right, we have very few instances of that in-school transmission because we have, kids who are actually wearing their masks when they're supposed to be, and they're sitting behind those plexiglass dividers. So what it does is it reduces that transmission risk greatly, but we unfortunately still have to quarantine the students and the staff when they're in that situation.
Okay, any other questions for the district update?
Sorry, I have one follow-up just on that discussion and what Vera had said, and I'm not trying to kind of like set up anything here. I'm just curious, is the reason that we as a public school district have to follow the CDC and the DOH state and federal guidelines and like private schools, Catholic schools do not, is just a matter of funding? Like because we take money from the state, we have to listen to their rules? How are the Catholic schools kind of sidestepping these guidelines?
I'm not sure. I'll speak. I don't know if Pat has or Devin has. I mean, I sit in a lot of these meetings and I hear, a lot of conversation about quarantining and grade and school closures, and as much in the private schools as I hear in our district. So I'm not sure if that is a reality or if that's just been like a myth that has been perpetuated throughout this entire time, that public schools seem to be escaping, closures and quarantining. Because when I listen to the conversations that are happening with, say, health officials, either at the county level or, even more in a local area, I'm hearing that they are quarantining and closing, when they need to as well. I don't know, Pat, if you have any other information. I mean, ultimately, I guess, you're right, Rachel, maybe they aren't under the auspices of the county Department of Health or a local Department of Health as much as a public school district is. So maybe are they skirting some of these requirements or guidelines? I guess that could be happening. I'm not sure. But, we're fortunate in Middletown that we not only have our Middletown Department of Health to help assist us with this, because none of us are medical experts, but, the county Department of Health, the Monmouth County Department of Health also provides guidance and updates to all districts, not just the ones that don't have a local. So, and they've been pretty consistent almost, at all times that I've seen anyway, that I've been in the conversations and as an observer and listening more than anything, that the county and our local health department are very, very much in sync with the New Jersey Department of Health. That all three seem to really be providing very consistent guidance.
Yeah, and just to echo what Kim had said, sitting in those meetings, actually, we've been praised as a district because we did such a good job of following the guidelines and not having to ever shut down as an entire district since September. Probably maybe one of the only, but definitely one of the few in Monmouth County that was open from September to June, hopefully, without shutting down entirely as a district. But in those meetings, my point is during those meetings, those officials do, allude to other private schools have had to shut down, or they are following the guidelines. So I think it may be more like rumors or myths that are out there than actual reality. Because if you look at it, I know that some of those private schools have definitely shut down, or classes have been shut down due to COVID restrictions.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know it's anecdotal, but I have family members that are in St. Mary's and they've shut down classrooms. There's just a lot less kids in public or private school, so you don't hear of it as much, but the classrooms are shutting down. Not all the time, probably as recently as we do, but they're still doing it. I do think a lot of it's rumor. Any other questions for the district? I can't see the chat.
Looks like we're good with the chat.
Okay, great. Okay, we'll move on to Vera for Middletown Friends of Different Learners. And thank you to all the district reps for giving us updates all year long.
I think
Go ahead, Vera.
actually, I'll just,
Heather, sorry.
It's okay, as long as I'm here. And thanks for all the information today. That was really helpful to kind of get more explanations on what's going on. So tonight, the district is presenting inclusion in our district, along with NJCIE and Montclair University and MTFDL. So we're excited about that. And, as we've talked before, the research is definite. Both gen ed and special ed have better social and academic outcomes in an inclusive environment. And as inclusion was a major initiative supported by parents and administrators during the strategic planning process, we encourage all parents to attend to see how the project will be benefiting everybody. So our next item is, so we hope, everybody can make it tonight. Our next item is strategic planning. We're just hoping for more clarification on what the status is of the planning process. We understand the consultant's contract has ended and that parts of the plan, such as inclusion planning efforts, are clearly moving forward, which is great. The pandemic obviously has presented challenges, and we just liked an update as to where we stand with other strategic plan initiatives at this point. And I don't know if somebody wants to, or if I should just keep going and then let other people respond once I'm done. Why don't I do that since we're on Zoom? On our other point on equity teams and idea funds. So we understand that the district has created equity teams at each school, which will be meeting and making action plans in the near future. So we'd like to kind of know more about the scope of these efforts and are looking forward to discussing them in more detail with the administration at our next meeting. And we know equity is obviously important for inclusion to be a reality for our students, and that issues and solutions are going to vary with each school. And we hope that parents can be involved in this process to provide, another perspective. And we know that IDEA funding can be used to directly benefit children in our district. So we are particularly interested in how these teams and the consultant that's been hired will be directly benefiting students over the long term. So we're looking forward to more discussion and conversation about where that's headed. And finally, we'd like to recognize our teachers, service providers, and paras who have all worked diligently to support our students over this very demanding year. We thank you again for keeping school fun and ensuring that our kids keep learning. So thank you. And that's it.
Thank you, Heather. Can I just ask if our parent PIC representatives haven't done so already, can they post the link for the inclusion meeting tonight on their school websites? I know I'll do North if it's not done already.
Yeah, that'd be great. We have it up on our Facebook page, and I think the flyer's been shared with the district.
Right. Okay. Anybody have any questions for Heather?
Heather, is tonight's meeting going to be recorded and promoted afterwards if anybody can't attend live or, not, at the time it happens?
My understanding is that the event will be recorded up until the question and answer period, and then that portion will not be recorded.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay. And I assume we can ask Ms. Tobacco or Mr. Capone for the strategic planning update that you were looking for, Heather. If nobody has any more questions for Heather, we can move on to our BOE update with Ms. Tobacco and Mr. Capone.
Good morning, everyone. How are you, Danielle? Mrs. Tobacco couldn't make it today. She has a personal thing going on right now, actually unexpected. So I'm here for everyone. I just want to give a couple of updates myself for the Board of Ed. The good news, obviously, on the COVID front, the governor has loosened some guidelines. And it looks like this time around, Middletown got it right. And we look to be opening up full days in the perfect timing. As far as strategic planning is concerned, I had a conversation with Mrs. Walker last week. It looks like she will be giving an update at the next workshop meeting for strategic planning, as well as also to let everybody know that the public in-person meetings will most likely resume this month. We will let everybody know what date it will be resuming, but the plan should be set forth probably later on this week.
That's great news that that we could go in person. Thank you. Is there anything else? Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Capone for Board of Ed questions? No?
I just have one quick one. So I'm glad to hear that strategic planning is kind of moving back to the front burner, because I know obviously a lot of work and time and effort went in by a lot of the people on this call right now. I guess it seems like there may need to be kind of a catching up and like level setting. And I don't know, is there any opportunity for kind of a summary of all the strategic planning learnings from the past, year and a half to be presented at a Board of Ed meeting, just to make sure it's a new board. There's a lot of stuff that has changed. So I feel like it might benefit everybody if we kind of have a little refresher on everything that was discovered and all of the survey results and all of the work that Malone and McBroom did and all the work that the Schoolhouse Strategy folks did and those decks and all that data. I know it would be kind of a regurgitation of a lot of material, but I think it might be beneficial since there are so many new players involved now. So just a request, I guess, for both the Board of Ed members, but also for the public to kind of get a refresh on what was revealed by the entire process so that we can hit the ground all on the same page and can move forward more effectively.
Yep. I would transmit that message over to Mrs. Walker, but I do believe she will give a full in detail update, especially when it comes to inclusion, which is the part of the strategic planning that we all do feel even though throughout the pandemic, we did move forward with it as the best of our ability. But like saying strategic planning and talking about redistricting, two different things that people are speaking about. Obviously, the redistricting capital plan is one portion of it. The inclusion is the other portion, which we do believe we did move forward with throughout this whole process.
Oh, no, absolutely. And I apologize if I kind of insinuated that we hadn't made any progress on that. I guess I was more, you're right, speaking to the kind of overcrowding and other issues with facilities more than that.
That's what a lot of people have been doing.
Progress has been phenomenal.
Yes, a lot of people have been lumping it together, and you try to explain, you have a strategic plan as the word is a broad base, whereas redistricting and capital plan is one portion. You have the inclusion portion, which is another aspect. So yes, Mrs. Walker will be giving a very big update at the workshop from what I led to believe, and we will update everybody at that point. But like I said, this might possibly take place in person, which could be good. And moving forward, as I spoke about last prior meeting, myself and Ms. Minuiz would like to get together with the whole district again and go over concerns and ideas moving forward, because since the last year and a half, 2 years ago, things have changed. And like we said, we spoke to Malone and McBroom, and they actually stated that you don't know what your enrollment's going to be like in September yet. So you really need to make sure your capital plan is set forth forward first prior to doing any sort of redistricting, because you'll be doing it twice or maybe 3 times, which made sense.
Thank you.
Yep.
Will the,
no, moving to in-person meetings, I fully agree with, because I feel like I got a lot more out of the meetings in person, but will there still be a Zoom or live stream component that's interactive for folks who might not be able to like leave their kids given the time of night stuff?
For right now, due to the executive order that is in place, that will obviously be a definitely yes.
Okay, and then after the executive order is lifted, do you know,
Well,
has there
it
been
seems like the
discussion
governor's-
about maintaining that?
Seems like the governor is making progress in rapid pace at this point. So, you know, I couldn't give a date. I don't know when he's looking to lift all regulations and all mandates, but, you know, maybe at one point in time we would just do in person. I would assume, you know, this is a challenging time for us also to get everybody on Zoom in person, making sure the room capacity can fit everyone and where everybody will go. So just a little bit of a logistical issue right now, really.
Okay, but it's not predetermined that we'll totally get rid of Zoom once we can do in person fully.
I
It's
don't
still
think
a
it's
discussion.
predetermined. Nope.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, we had the live stream for people that wanted to watch it pre-pandemic. So the question is, do we allow questions from the live stream? That's the only difference, right?
yeah, we always recorded the meetings. Okay, thank you, Mr. Capone. Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Capone? Okay, we'll move on to old business. Does anybody have any old business to discuss?
Sorry, I have one more thing. I don't know, I guess it would fall under old business. I just wanted to ask for an update on the ASL, the sign language being offered in the middle schools. I know it was put forward to the kids entering 7th and 8th grade, and then it had to be rewound. So then the kids were told, pick one of the languages. And I know at the high school level, it had been a virtual instructor. And I had thought that if they couldn't find an in-person instructor, that would be what they would do with middle school. But obviously something happened. I was just hoping to get a little bit more clarity, because my daughter was bummed that she couldn't take her sign language class next year.
I agree
Yeah,
with
we're
you.
bummed too. We're equally bummed. I don't know, Mr. Lawson, to jump in if I leave anything out, but yes, we had full intention of expanding the ASL to 7th and 8th grade. We put it in the course offering because we had to get an understanding of how much interest really existed to help in our planning for personnel. We have been very actively trying to recruit ASL teachers since last spring. We continued it through the summer, even into the fall. And then again, we picked up after the holidays, the end of January, with heavy recruitment. We actually did have a teacher, very experienced from another district, who was interested. Mr. Lawson, Mrs. Caruso, Mr. Scarano, Mr. Curry met with her. They interviewed. She was excellent. We jumped on it right away. We offered her a contract. She then decided on her own that she wanted to stay in her current district. We were very disappointed. We really thought we had a winner there. We know through course registration, through student selections, that we were probably going to need at least 2 teachers for middle school and high school, possibly 3. And that's what we were really looking at, more like 3. So we thought we were a third of the way there. And then we have another person who we're trying to work towards getting certified and getting because they need to take certain courses and pass. It's a series of exams. It's very difficult. It's one of the most difficult certifications to obtain in New Jersey for teachers. So that's very disappointing. We're starting to learn that more and more as we go through the process of trying to onboard someone. So we had met as a team, and we were all unanimous in our thinking that if we were successful in securing at least 1 teacher, it was going to be prioritized for the middle school, because we know middle school learners, are probably would do best with a live instructor versus a virtual instructor, because we're finding that that's even challenging for high school students, the virtual instructor for some. So when we got to the point last week where we realized we were this late into the game, and now we had no prospects, we thought we had 1, prior to last week. So that's why we were confident in moving forward at middle school at that point. But when we lost that, candidate, we felt it was in the best interest of students to let them know where we were, at this point in time, so they could make a decision and it not have substantial ripple effects on the rest of their schedule. the closer we would have gotten to doing final schedules, it would have become potentially more complicated to redo their schedule. And we didn't want it, we didn't think that was fair. You know, we wanted to be transparent and let the students and the parents know where we were at this point. We are going to continue to try to recruit. Right now, it looks like we will have to have, at this point in time, a virtual program is for the second year at the high school. We do have quite a bit of students who are moving on to ASL 2 next year. We are working with the company that we partner with, though, that we contract with, because we want to make some changes to the way it was implemented this year. Now that we kind of have a year under our belt and we have a little bit more knowledge of what worked and what didn't. So we are working very directly with the directors and the managers at Proximity Learning to really voice what our needs are and what our requests are based on feedback from students and parents for next year. But we're going to continue to still try to recruit. We just posted it again. If anybody knows anyone, please let them know. I mean, we put it on every job board, Monmouth County, the state, and all the colleges. We went right to TCNJ, which has one of the best ASL programs in the state. There's just no viable candidates right now. They're going more to private because that's where they see the money, quite honestly. They're not really looking for public school placement. Even trying to give them incentives and, like taking full credit, giving them full credit for any experience they have to try to move them along on the guide. We just can't compete with private right now. In some ways they're getting double, triple salaries.
We were excited about it. I was looking at AppleTrack every day. Like, come on, there's got to be people out there somewhere. But on the flip side of that, we were concerned about proximity learning with middle school kids. And especially because, we would probably have, pretty large sections. I had 70 8th graders and 60 7th graders, and the percentages were similar at Thompson and Bayshore. So we would have had a lot of sections of it, and just the idea of 25 7th graders in a more virtual type class was it just wasn't, it just didn't feel right. And I know we're gonna continue to look at it, but there was just nobody out there. We're
also looking at ways that we might be able to provide students access to that content, to that learning content through advisory.
We were thinking about advisory, yeah.
We are looking at ways to make it available to students more as like a self-paced independent study type opportunity for those who really have a true desire to learn it. And then that, in our thinking, until we can get a certified instructor to start, actually running the classes in the interim, it'll give the students foundational knowledge and, prerequisite skills so that when they get to high school, if they do choose to take 1 and 2, or even 3 and 4 as the program grows, they're not going to come in cold. They'll have some prerequisite information, knowledge. So we are looking at ways to give them that opportunity, probably through like advisory.
And I just want to throw something else in. And, the three of us, the 3 middle school principals, we're in a middle school principal roundtable. So we're pretty aware of what's going on, throughout the county and other middle schools. And the one thing I will say, our world language program, what we do now, is second to none. We provide more world language. I mean, very few programs, very few middle schools do anything close to what we're doing as it is. And that would just be another awesome component if we could ever pull it off.
Yeah, if I could just, because I was, if you are able to pull something off, and no offense to Rachel's incoming 7th grader, even if it was for the 8th graders, I was shocked at Thompson, the almost 25% of the kids or families wanted to take ASL. I mean, it was amazing, the amount of interest. So as well as I think it really helps with the inclusion component as well, because my daughter's going to be taking her 3rd level of Spanish, which needs to be modified, and everybody says, go to world cultures, but that's a little difficult because it's a lot of reading, a lot of writing. So really ASL was a great option. So even if you're able to somehow pull it off for 8th graders, I think that would be great. Thank you for looking at it. Wonderful.
Hey, Kim, has there been any discussion about possibly using the high school students that are in the ASL and are continuing to maybe help the middle school students?
No, but that's a really good point, and I will certainly bring that back, especially if the students are doing more of an independent study. It's a great way for the high school students to get volunteer hours, to serve as like mentors. Great, and then that's good for them because you become better at the content when you're actually teaching it. So, good idea, Hope. I will definitely write that down. We've been so focused on trying to recruit a person.
Yeah, exactly. I say, then they can become your employee in a few years too.
Yeah.
I think that would be phenomenal. And even if it's not able to be done within the curriculum or in the standard day, even a club potentially, if there's a way to fund an advisor for that. And again, have some high school kids come and just teach basics, the alphabet, basic. I think there would be a huge amount of interest and it would kind of grease the wheels for what's coming in high school for those kids. Because again, I know my daughter was like ecstatic about the opportunity, so excited. And her little face when she told me she got the email that it wasn't going to be available, my heart broke. And I knew that there were a lot of kids. So I appreciate the kind of background on why it was so hard. And now maybe I'll encourage my kids to pursue becoming ASL teachers to know they'll get a job once they graduate.
Yeah, that's definitely a hot job market. And
But
yeah,
also-
we did talk about the possibility of like a club. That's another thing we've been kicking around.
Thank you.
But also, I think advisory would be a great vehicle too, especially with what Hope said. If there's a way we could somehow tie that in with high school kids, and because one of the slight issues we did have though, we also have we had French 2 and Spanish 2 kids that were leaving that to go to sign language. We don't really necessarily want that either. But if they because those honors kids that would end up going all the way to like AP French and Spanish. So, but if this was also additionally offered somehow, I think that would be also awesome.
Hope, great idea.
My daughter is
Anybody?
in a class and she is actually looking to move forward with this for college. So she's looking at colleges right now. And I can tell you that she said that there's a lot of people that are really interested. So definitely if you can bridge the high school to the middle school, it'll help both populations.
So this is something that's a little personal to me because my brother-in-law is deaf and all my children know sign language. They're not, from 4 years old to 16-year-old, obviously there's a little bit of in between of trying to still continue to learn, and I do have, like Rachel, a incoming seventh grader, so it affects her in a little bit, so.
Is there an opportunity I know in middle school you don't want virtual, but to have that virtual component and maybe a student actually there to demonstrate the virtual component, or tie it together? There used to be student teachers that I know went from or assistant teachers that used to go from the high school to middle school. I know when my daughter was there, some of her friends did that.
Yeah,
So-
that's the tomorrow's teachers. The problem is that in order to get it to all the students, advisory runs all day long. So the students who have advisory in the morning, but we're thinking of very creative ways, for them to use advisory as like an independent study. And then I think Hope's suggestion, and because we were already thinking of like an after school club to also bring it together. But Hope's suggestion might be great because we were missing the person to run the after school club. That was the problem. We thought we had the candidate, ideally who would be able to do that. She would have been able to teach at the high school, if we only had one, and we were thinking then she could have maybe run after school clubs for middle school. But maybe the students can help assist with that. They can help, if we have a facilitator more in terms of a teacher, and then the students could actually be part of like the mentors.
Kim, would there be a way also to hook this into a senior seminar opportunity or the internships?
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, is there any other new business? I know I have two quick things. One, the President's Council, we did not get to meet a second time this year. It just got away from me. There were a lot of other meetings going on. I apologize. But the President's Council Facebook page, MTPS, is still active. And I'm requesting that you send your new presidents for next year, along with your pick reps to Margie. And she'll put together the list for next year. So as soon as you know who your pick reps are for next year and who your president and vice president will be, if you could forward them so we can start up again next year. And she wanted to thank all the administration and all the pick reps for a wonderful year. I think we got a lot of information out to the public. And thank Margie, even though she's not here, for doing a fabulous job. And I can see how hard it is because I'm not really good at it. Is there anybody else who had any new business or anything else to say? Okay, with that, thank you. Have a great summer.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good day, everyone.